Hi there. So I just want to create this quick video for you to give you an overview of how Simul works within a legal context, the problems that it solves, etc., etc. So Simul is largely designed to solve this problem. The way that most law firms currently collaborate on Microsoft Word documents, be they contracts, agreements, whatever it may be, is they'll have a central drive and a folder for each document. And then within that folder, they'll basically have a series of different Microsoft Word files, each one representing a different version of the document. And so typically how it works is that somebody will come in, they'll open up version 16 of the document or whatever the latest one is, they'll make some changes, and then they'll save as and save it as version 17. Then maybe someone else comes in, opens the document, makes some changes, saves it as version 18, so on and so forth. And sometimes people vary away from the file name structure a little bit by adding little things like this and like this. But ultimately, this is generally how collaboration on Microsoft Word documents works in most law firms. There are a bunch of problems with this approach. The first one being it's really hard to find can often be hard to find the latest version. So if you've got all these different files in the folder with crazy file names like V28 final Dave's edits, someone coming in there, it can actually be quite difficult for them to know whether which document is actually the latest one and which one they should they should work on. And ultimately, if they choose the wrong one, they might spend an hour or two going through a document and adding their comments and doing all of these things, only to find out later that that actually wasn't the latest version, and then they're going to have to go do it all again. Similarly, it's quite easy to actually accidentally overwrite someone's work. So if you forget to do save as instead of save, what you'll essentially do is you'll instantly overwrite all that person's previous work, and quite possibly, apart from just overwriting their work, you'll then also delete all of their changes from the history of the document, so you don't know what they added at what point in time, etc., etc. It's also very difficult to work simultaneously. So if two people were to open version 5 of the document and make edits at the same time, they're both going to then try to save it as version 6, and then you actually have two copies of version 6. Best case scenario is that you identify that you have two copies of version 6, and you've got to manually compare and change and merge those changes together. Worst case scenario is that you don't, the next person to come in and work on the document doesn't realize that there's two copies of version 6, chooses one person's, continues working on that one, and then the changes that the other person made are actually just lost forever in the document. And if they were really important, like a change to a clause or something like that, that can actually have quite a significant impact. And there is many stories around the web and in different places where things like this have happened. They've sent the wrong version of the contract to the counterparty. It's been signed, and then basically an agreement, the incorrect agreement has been executed. It's also very hard to identify changes between versions. So, for instance, if you had contributed version 3 of the document, and then version 4 had been created, version 5 had been created, and version 6 had been created, and then you were coming in to try to create version 7, it would actually be very hard for you to identify what was changed in 3, 4, and 5, and kind of get your head back into the document. It's also very difficult to see the history of changes because once track changes, you can use track changes, but once they're accepted or rejected, they're gone forever. So if you ever needed to go back over the document and see what changes were made in version 6, 5, and version 4, you'd actually literally there'd be no markup in there, because once those track changes are accepted or rejected, they're gone forever. And finally, it's difficult to access old content because that content is spread out across many files. So if you had a clause that was in an early version but got deleted and you want to use it again, maybe it's in the same document, maybe it's in a new contract you're creating, it'd be very difficult for you to actually go and find that clause. You'd have to open up 27 different files, one for each version, and trawl through each of them trying to find where that clause was. So Simul basically aims to solve these things. It's a version control and collaboration tool for Microsoft Word. And now I'm going to jump in and give you a quick demo of how it works. So here's a document that I've created on my computer earlier called the Business Sale Agreement. And I'm going to use this to show you how Simul works. So In this hypothetical scenario, I'm Aaron. I'm one of the lawyers at your firm, and I need to collaborate on this with my colleague James, who's also a lawyer at your firm, and then we've also got the counterparty, a guy called Joel Watt. So as Aaron, I've written the first draft of this document, and I'm now ready to send it over to James for his comments and reviews. So I'm just going to save it to my computer. And save it to my desktop. And I'm going to close it down. I'm going to come over here to my Simul account. I'm going to go add new document. I'm going to go to my desktop, grab the business sale agreement, and drop it in. And I'm going to open it up. So pretty much in the same way that you would work with a shared drive, in that you'd create something and then sort of upload it to the shared drive, and then it's sort of accessible for everybody else. That's basically what's happened here as well. You've created a document and then you've uploaded it to Simul, and then I'm going to go invite members to collaborate. I'm going to invite my colleague James Porter, and I'm going to make him a contributor. Cool. Now I'm going to jump over to James's screen here, and you can see here on this second desktop, I'm in Safari, so a different browser, and I'm logged in as James. And if I scroll down to the bottom here, I can see that business sale agreement has been shared with me, and as James, I can access it. And I can see here, when I'm as James, I can come in here, and I can see, oh great, Aaron's created version 1 of the document, and there it is there. I can click open in Word, and essentially what Simul will do is ping Microsoft Word on my computer and say, hey, open up the business sale agreement for James to edit. And here it is. So as James, I'm going to come in here and I'm going to say, let's actually, it should be $15,000, and it should be the 5th of the 4th, 2020 that it settles. And then as James, all I need to do in order to kind of save it down and upload it back to Simul is basically just close it and save it in the exact same way that I normally would if I was working on a shared drive or on my computer or whatever. So what happens is once I click save, it's automatically uploaded to Simul, and Simul will instantly create version 2 and show us what changed. So it will show that James added the $10,000, changed from $10,000 to $15,000, and he changed that from there to there. So as Aaron, I can now come back in to the document, and I can see, oh great, James has edited my document. Great. So I can then come down here and I can see what James changed. And then if I want to go and make further edits, all I do as Aaron is click open in Word, and here it is. So as Aaron, I can come in here, and maybe I'm going to change one final thing and one other thing, and I'm going to say the seller agrees to sell the property in good condition, exclusive of the oven, which is in bad condition. And again, all I need to do, close it down, click save. Simul will automatically upload to Simul, and version 3 will automatically be created. And Simul's comparison algorithm will run and highlight what changed. So that is kind of the core of collaborating in Simul. All you do is you upload the document, you invite the people that need to edit it, and they can basically come in, click the open in Word button, it'll open up on their computer, make changes, save it down, and Simul pretty much does everything else. It automatically creates all the versions. It has its own algorithm that runs and compares the two versions to show what changed, regardless whether track changes was turned on or not, etc., etc. However, it's not always that everybody is going to be in Simul. So, in a classic law situation, you might have the two, the Aaron and James, who are the lawyers inside our firm, but then we also need to collaborate with the counterparty, Joel. So Simul also makes that quite easy and possible as well. So what you can do is you can come in here, you go download a copy, and this will literally just download a copy of the latest version to your computer. You can see here it's called Business Sale Agreement V003. You email that off to Joel. Joel opens it on his computer, and maybe he comes in here and says, this isn't a good, the buyer agrees to purchase the property are listed above in its current condition, plus all the inventory. And so Joel just makes the changes on his local computer, saves them on his local computer, and emails them back to you. As Aaron, I can then come in and import Joel's version so that I can, and that allows me to do two things. One, it will run, the comparison algorithm will run and show me everything that Joel changed, regardless of the fact that he didn't have track changes turned on or not. And it will also then put Joel's changes into our version history so that we have, if we ever need to go back over it, we have a full history of the document. But you'll see here that it's just come back in as Aaron Bieshel rather than coming in as Joel Watt. And that's because Aaron is ultimately the person who uploaded it. But what you can do is you can go name this version, and we can just say it's Joel's edits and name it. And then if we click this more details tab, we can see the names here. So you can always you can name every version if you want. You could just name versions that come in from third parties, and you can always see, look over this at any point in time and see the full history. Similarly, it has this sort of comments functionality which you can use in a couple of different ways. So one way might just be using it kind of notes, and you might say this is the version where Joel added the clause. And you kind of use it as a notes field that will allow you to keep notes as to not only what changed but why it changed. Or you could also use it as a way of communicating with people. So you might then be able to say, James, what do you think we should do about Joel's changes to the clause? And James would get notified by email that there's a comment there, and he could come back in and he could respond to you. And then what it allows you to do is basically have both the conversation around the document and the different versions of the document in the one place. So if you're using sort of a shared drive, what's often happening is you've got the document over in one place in the shared drive, but you've got your conversation around the document and what we're going to change and why happening in something like email. And so it's all in two different places, and it's very hard to actually sort of figure out what changed and why it changed because it's not in one spot. Whereas in Simul, you can have the whole conversation that's happening around the version, along with the version and the changes all in one spot. So now that we have Joel's changes back in, it's actually going to go back over to Aaron and James to continue collaborating on the document and finish it off. Now, historically, what's happened in this document is that everybody's worked in a linear fashion. Aaron created version 1, Joel opened it up and made some changes and created version 2. Then we sent it off to Joel, and he made some changes, and then Aaron uploaded them and created version 3. However, what's going to happen this time is that Aaron and James are actually going to work on the document simultaneously. Now, when you're using a shared drive style system, this is quite challenging because, as I mentioned before, if Aaron was to come in and open version 3, make some edits and save it as version 4, and at the same time James was to come in, open version 3, make some edits and save it as version 4, you then end up with 2 version 4s. And best case scenario, you work it out and you've got to manually compare and merge. Worst case scenario, you don't realize it and you just keep going on with James's version and all of Aaron's changes are lost. However, Simul addresses this problem with a feature that we call branches. So essentially what will happen is that Simul will automatically detect that both Aaron and James have the document open at the same time. It will save each person's change in a separate branch. It will show you what each person changed and give you a very simple one-click way to merge them back in. So let me show you how it works. So as Aaron, I'm going to click Open in Word and open the document in Word on my computer. And again, Simul's just going to ping Word on my computer and open it up like so. And then as James, over on James' screen, I'm going to click Open in Word. Oops, need to select the latest version. I'm going to select Open in Word. And again, Simul's just going to ping Microsoft Word on my computer and tell it to open up the document. And here it is. So as you can see here now, Aaron has the document open and James has the document open. So as James, I'm going to come in here and I'm going to say, no, we've pushed it back to the 10th. And then as Aaron, I'm going to come in here and I'm going to make a change that, actually no, it's now going to be 12,000. So as Aaron, I'm going to close down the document. And then as James, I'm going to close down the document. And we can see here what's happened. So in this little diagram shows you pretty much exactly what's happened here. So Aaron opened version 4 of the document, made some changes, and it was saved as version 5. And James opened version 4 of the document, made some changes, and Simul recognized that this was happening at the same time and saved it as version 6, but highlighted it kind of in a separate branch. So if we were to click version 5, Aaron's version, it will show us what changes Aaron made, in which case Aaron was the one who changed it from 15 to 12,000. And if we were to click version 6, it would show us what change James made. James is the one who changed the date. It also puts this big bar at the top here that says that, makes it very clear to everybody that there's more than one version of this document and gives you a one-click way to merge. So what you can do is you select the version that you want to merge it with, in which case I want to merge this with version 5 and click merge. So what it does is it brings the two documents together and creates version 7 with both Aaron and James's changes merged in. The extra cool thing that it does is when you click open in Word and open up the merged version 7 on the computer, in Microsoft Word, it will actually use Microsoft Word's default track changes feature to highlight what changes each person made. So as you can see coming down here, hover over this, and it will show that Aaron Bishel was the one who changed it to 12,000. And if I hover over this, it will show that James Porter was the one who changed it to the 10th of the 4th. So this is particularly useful in much longer documents where, say, Aaron, this is a pretty simplistic example. Aaron, maybe in a more sophisticated example, it's a 50-page business sale agreement. Aaron changed 10 things on 10 different pages, and James changed 20 things on 20 different pages. If you had to manually compare those things, merge and compare those, that would be very, very, very difficult to make sure to find every change and make sure it's should be accepted or whatever. Whereas Simul makes it super easy. It highlights every change that each person made, and then you can basically just go through and accept and or reject all the changes, and that's it. You're done. So finally, close that down, click save, and then it's created version 8, which is the properly fully merged version. So finally, now that we've kind of finished with the document, what we might do is we're going to publish it, and we'll call it final ready for client signing. And so what that does is it makes it available on the this what we call the major versions tab. This is a section of the product that people with viewer-only permissions can access. And so what they can do, these people can't make edits to the document at all, but what they can do is access any of the published versions. So they could, your client could come in, you could send this, you could invite your client to this, give them viewer-only permissions, and then they can come in here, download a copy, and sign it or whatever. But they can't see any of the drafts or anything that happened in order to get here, nor can they actually make any edits themselves. So that's a bit of an overview of how Simul works, and from a just sort of like a workflow perspective of how you'd collaborate on a document. There are a couple of cool other features that are worth sort of highlighting at this point in time. The first one is that you can actually compare any version to any version. So when you click a single version, for instance, say version 4, what it's actually doing here, what it's showing you here is what changed between version 3 and 4. However, if you wanted to see what changed between, say, version 7 and version 3, what you can do is click version 7, then right-click version 3 and go compare versions. And what it will do is show you everything that changed between version 3 and version 7. This can be really useful if you've got many people working on a document, and say, Aaron was the one that made the edits at version 3, and then 4 or 5 other people had gone on to create 4 or 5 other versions of the document, and then Aaron needed to jump back in again. Aaron could just do this really easily, say, compare the latest version of the document to the last one that he edited, and it would show him everything that changed in between, in all of those different versions in one spot. So he's fully up to speed with where the document is at now, and then he can go in and make further changes. Similarly, there's also this feature called copies, which what it does is it basically creates a master and a child relationship between documents. So we might call this one the business sale agreement counterparty version. And so it creates a completely new version of the document that can have its own members, its own version history and whatever. And it's kind of like a completely isolated environment. But as you can see in the breadcrumbs here, it's actually linked to the master document. So you might be able to, and at any point in time, you can actually push and pull versions between the master and the child. So what you might use this for is creating the counterparty version. You can invite the counterparty into, or maybe the client version, invite the client into this isolated environment. He could make his changes in this isolated environment, and then you can push them, you can pull them back into your master, or push your versions from your master into the client version. And the client ultimately has this kind of clean version that they can see and can change and collaborate on, that doesn't have all of your 50 versions that your 5 different lawyers all went through and changed there. They can just sort of have this own environment where they only get shown selected versions and can edit and make changes and comments and everything like that. So yeah, just a bit of an overview of how Simul would work for collaborating on a document like a business sale agreement. So the main benefits of using a tool like Simul are as follows. It's easy to access the latest version. As you saw in there, the latest version is always at the top of the list. So there's never going to be anybody coming into the shared drive and you've got 50 different files in there and that they're trying to figure out which one is the latest. It's, as you saw in the demo, it's very easy for multiple people to work simultaneously. If 2 people do open the same version at the same time, Simul will detect that, create the separate branch, show you what each person changed, and give you a way to merge it back together. It's also very easy to see what changed between versions. As you saw when we merged, when we brought Joel's version back, Joel, the counterparty's version, back into the document, it marked up exactly what Joel changed, even though Joel actually didn't put track changes on at all. But it's very easy to make sure that a counterparty or somebody like that isn't sneaking in any changes or anything like that. It's very easy to merge different versions of the document if there is a conflict, which is what I showed before. You can see the full history of changes. So at any point in time, you could go back and click on version 3 or version 4 or version 5 and see exactly what changed, who changed it, when they changed it, and if you'd have some comments in there or some conversation in there, you'd also be able to see why it was changed as well. And finally, it's super easy to revert or to access content from old versions. So at any point in time, you could go back to click on version 2 and open up version 2 in Microsoft Word, and then you could grab out some content that was in version 2 or whatever and go and use it somewhere else. In terms of pricing, Simul is very, very accessible. So we actually have 2 versions of the product, both the cloud version, which is hosted by us and accessed through a browser, so typical SaaS model. And as you can see here, if you're a one-man, sort of independent lawyer, you can access it for $15 a month. Or if you've just got a small boutique firm with sort of say 5 or 6 people, it's only going to cost you $75 per month. There is also what we call the enterprise version. The enterprise version has a number of extra features, but the primary difference is that the enterprise version is hosted on your servers, and it's really targeted at larger organizations who may have strict requirements around where their documents are hosted, or perhaps they need their software to meet certain regulations or security compliance standards or whatever. We can actually just give you the software, you host it yourself in your own environment, so all your documents stay on your servers. It inherits whatever sort of security practices you have internally. And that enterprise version starts at $4,000 a year and goes up from there depending on how many users you have. So that's a bit of an overview of Simul. Hope you liked what you saw.